Kid Dale in the house.
Hey.
Thanks for coming down and teaching an awesome seminar.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is really cool, man. I love this little place. This is sick.
We have fun, yeah.
Oh, man. That was cool. That was fun.
It's been a while, right? You said that since you've taught a seminar?
Since 2018, I think was the last time, or 19 was the last time I was doing like a lot of seminars. So to go back in there from just training and to be like, okay, I got to teach. It's one thing, it's one thing developing the skill to be able to do something. It's another thing discovering what that is and being able to articulate it so others can absorb that information. Yeah. And that's the hard bit of teaching, really.
Yeah, I appreciate how you break things down, just concepts that way. I really appreciate that. People can teach a lot of different techniques, right? But if you don't understand the bigger picture of things,
I feel like there's definitely a missing connection when it comes to a lot of coaching, where they try and just teach people how they do things rather than why they do things.
Why?
And that's fine. The problem that arises from that is when you teach someone how to do something, then they just know how to do that one thing. When you teach them why you do something, then they can change how they do it, because they have a rule for how to apply that, and they can just find many ways to do it. So as you can see from my seminar, I try and focus more on teaching them why they're doing certain things so they can be more flexible with how they're doing it. And I think that... and you would know this is at a high level when you compete. People have seen almost everything. There's very few things that you can show them that that's new. So what's most important is how you deceive, the people that you're competing against. So I think it's much more powerful when you know why you're doing something, because then you can sit there and select, you'll have, like, I have a whole heap of techniques I can do, but what are you least going to expect? And then you're going to be far more successful. And I feel like a lot of my success in rolling has been dictated just by me being able to deceive somebody, Obviously, and I was saying this in the seminar to one guy when I might have been to the group, when I'm doing anything, or if I'm in any position, there's two major things that are going through my head. First is, what do they think I'm going to do? The second is, what do I think they're going to do? And if I'm accurate with both of those predictions, then I'm going to be successful with whatever I do. Of course, at the start, when you don't have anything to do, success is going to be extremely limited. But once you have a couple of things and you start developing a bit of a skill set, then it's really important to be able to read somebody, And we do this constantly in every day, Even when I'm talking to you now, I'm reading is he listening to me? Is he enjoying this? And vice versa. So I think a lot of people miss that in jiu-jitsu, but I find it so important. And whenever I'm rolling with someone, like, I'm sitting there and I just feel like I'm reading them the whole time, like figuring out, like, what's he thinking? What does he think I'm going to do? And everything I do will, be a dictator of whether that was correct or not.
Yeah, that's good. The communication, right? And I appreciate that too, the way you're able to communicate everything.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I try.
Awesome.
I try.
Yeah.
It's I think since I think I started teaching when I was a blue belt. I started in 2008. I started teaching kids, and then
you shared with me a little bit how you got started, right?
Yeah.
Like you played.
So I was playing Australian rules football. We call it AFL, which is like rugby, but there's no offsides. There's a lot more you can do. It's a very quick paced game. And very physical. I had this eyebrow split open, my tooth broken doing that, and I snapped my ACL doing that. Most of my injuries came from that. And what a lot of the bigger players were starting to do with me was starting to rough me up behind play, because they realized I was a good player, but I was very timid. So they knew that if they give me a little bit of a punch from behind, then I'd probably be a little bit more hesitant going into the next, stoppage. So I started getting kind of scared, and I wanted to learn how to protect myself and be more confident. And it wasn't just in sport, it was in real life as well. There was a lot of situations where I was like, I wish I knew how to fight, because I would feel a lot better about being in this. I just felt very vulnerable. So I got into martial arts, and I started at a school, and the guy was Robert Parmakovsky, and it was more of a self-defense sort of style. And then maybe a couple sessions in, we did a ground session. And I remember looking at this kid, and he was like a skinny little dude. And I was just like, I'm going to bust this kid up so good. And I started in his half guard, and he swept me and submitted me and choked me. And I was just like, what is going on here? Like,
your mind is blown.
Yeah, I'm like, what am I missing? I'm very fit right now. I'm very strong. But this kid that's like weighs half as much as me and looks like he should be doing accounting for someone is just destroying me. So
Accounting for somebody.
like a real Johnny pencil pusher. And I was just like, man, I need to learn how to do this. So I started specializing more in that. I found a school closer to home because that one was really far away because I was working as a truck driver.
You grew up in Melbourne?
In Melbourne, yeah. And I was truck driving. So I lived in the Yarra Valley, and I would drive to Heidelberg, which is about an hour and 45-minute drive to work. Then I would do like truck driving all day, and then I would drive back. So where we were doing MMA,
how old were you when you started training jiu-jitsu?
I was 22 when I first started training.
Nice.
Yeah. That was the first time I started training there. And then I found a school closer to where I lived, about 30 minutes away from where I lived, and I started training there. It was a very small school run by a brown belt. And I trained there for a good year.
Was it who was the Peter DeBean?
That was after that.
That was after that.
So that was before that. He was technically under John Donahue, who was Machado, yeah. And then I kind of outgrew that because that was a very small school and it was just like, you know, for hobbyists. And I wanted to do more competing. So I found Peter DeBean's in the city, and I just looked it up and I saw that, there's black belts to train here. There's multiple black belts to train here. My coach wasn't even a black belt before then. He was a brown belt. So I went over there and I started.
What year was that?
That was 2009 now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm wrong. It was still 2008, end of 2008. So I did jiu-jitsu. 2008 February was the first time I did jiu-jitsu. I got my blue belt in 10 months. So once I got my blue belt, I went and trained under Peter DeBean. So that would have been the end of that year. And then I trained there till brown belt. And then I had a similar situation where it was probably just a point of difference in what Peter wanted coaching and the way I sort of trained. I was kind of a little bit of a black sheep there at the end. And it just didn't really go with the way Peter liked to teach in the end. So we thought it was both better for me to go somewhere else. And Yuri Simoes was coming into Australia.
Okay.
And a friend of mine contacted me and said, look, this guy's coming here and he's really good. And so I got him in contact with another gym owner and then I went under him. So I trained with him for, I think, 9 months. And then he left to America, and then I got my black belt after that. So that was 4 years in total from white to black, and I was competing still. I competed at Blue Belt World Championships at the Abu Dhabi Pro. I won that. I won the Purple Belt World Championships at the Abu Dhabi Pro. Then I went to Brazil. I won the Brazilian Nationals, and a lot of really tough fights. Like I had to beat DJ Jackson, Felipe Pena, Marcos Tinoco. They're all top black belts to win those. I ended up getting silver at the Abu Dhabi Pro.
Which is like, you're from Australia, so that's crazy, right? There's not to go all the way out there and have to compete. It's a whole other animal. I mean, I'm from America, so that's hard, right? But Australia is another.
Dude, I remember when I went there and I was in Abu Dhabi Pro 2010, and I'm looking at people pulling guard, and I'm like, why are people pulling guard? Like, that's a bad position. Like, it's just showing my guard was bad. Like, I try to get top game whatever I could, and I didn't know how to wrestle. I just tried, but I couldn't believe people were actually pulling guard. So that shows you how fresh jiu-jitsu was in Australia. The fact that I had never seen anyone want to play guard in my life, and there's people like, it was the Mendez brothers that were doing. They won that year. Adolfo Vieira came out and he won. What year was that? 2011. No, 2010.
2010. Yeah, I went down to Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I was there. Where was that door in that tennis arena?
Yeah. The outdoor one. And it started raining.
Yeah.
Fireworks. I had the fireworks.
Dude,
that was a mess.
That's crazy, right? Though that's crazy.
God. So they had fireworks, and the fireworks like blew up, and then they just like all fell on the mat. So there was like flaming things falling down.
How much money did they spend on? That's crazy,
Dude, I was
that's something for them too.
Oh yeah, it was just like pocket money. And I was competing against someone from Canada in the open weight division, and it's raining, and we're literally slipping on the mats because it's like raining. And I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so weird. So that was the first year I competed Abu Dhabi. I did the next year, and then I did the next year as well. So I was in the finals all 3 years. I got silver at the brown belt one though. I lost to a good friend of mine, Sebastian Broche, who has yoga for BJJ. And I'm really angry about it because I should have won that match. I fell asleep before, like as we're warming up, I fell asleep and he woke me up. Like he's like, Kit, we're going on right now. And I'm like, what? And I went on and I just had a huge adrenaline dump.
You weren't mentally ready for it.
My body was like, within a minute, my arms were burned out and I couldn't do anything. I was just like, and it was close, but then he like passed and got the points, passed again and I lost. But it was really good because one, I made a really good friend in Sebastian, and we've been friends ever since. He's like messaging me consistently right now, shows me his fat little vegan baby all the time.
Fat little vegan baby.
He's so cute. And he actually he's always trying to tell me to get into crypto right now.
Right?
But his yoga for BJJ is phenomenal. Like he actually helped me a lot. And he actually helped me, like he actually taught me how to warm up before competition, which I never did. And I've never had that problem ever since. And then he came and trained with me before No-Gi Worlds. There was a year I didn't do it and I helped coach him while I was here. So we've become really good friends.
Nice.
So that was awesome.
What kind of things does he have you do to warm up?
Just as much, just trying to resemble as much as what it happens when you're out in a match. So I pretty much I'll do a lot of wrestling.
Prime those movement patterns.
Yeah. It's just getting the breath going. One thing I definitely do is like I do a lot of sprints before that, just because the lungs are like balloons, and if you don't, if you go out there and you haven't really like warmed them up, then you get like that metallic blood taste in your lungs, and you feel like you got emphysema or something, and your muscles burn out. So
especially
I just try
out there,
and
it's
get
like really
warm.
dry, right?
Oh yeah, massively. And that was always a problem. Even coming here when I was training in Vegas, I just felt like so dehydrated, and took like 2 weeks before I would even get close to climatizing from Australia. It's just very different, and it was good once I moved out here because I don't have to deal with that, But I don't want to compete internationally anymore. I just want to compete here because I hate doing the traveling and. Even
you're competing in the Jiu-Jitsu World League, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I was pretty pumped when you told me that.
Yeah.
I'll be there all day for the 3 days. I'm excited, man.
It should be fun. And I haven't competed in so long. And I did do a couple super fights. Like I fought Tommy Langaker in Norway, which was really good. I fought Matthew Tesla, one of Danaher's guys. So I've been competing, but I mean, a lot of the time I'm traveling and just holidaying. Like when I fought both Matthew Tesla and Tommy Langaker, and they're both really great competitors. I'm like traveling, doing like hanging out with my girlfriend's family and stuff like that, and in Italy, and I'm not even training. And then like so, and it wasn't so much my fault. I honestly had a few injuries that just kept me off the mats a lot, and I had almost like a choice. It was either train very little and I can still train a lot, and I get injured and I can't compete. So it was really hard to try and compete, and I was still doing world championships.
What keeps you, because you're traveling, what keeps you grounded? What keeps you on point?
Well, I think just when it comes to jiu-jitsu, the way I look at jiu-jitsu, I think was very beneficial, where I try and look at it in a very long-term fashion of not trying to be really fit, but trying to be very technical and trying to be very efficient. So I think the way I train is really good because, one, I am almost always unfit. I'm actually really fit right now, so this is very different because I've been training a lot. But before that, I was always very unfit, so I didn't have a choice. Either if I push a high pace, I exhaust myself. So I'm like, okay, I need to be a lot more relaxed and really feel things and try and do only what I feel like is going to work. So I became a lot more efficient with my jiu-jitsu, which is great because now when I'm fit, I can just turn it up if I need to. But that was what helped me a lot, just the style in which I trained. If I was training like I did when I first got my black belt, like a lot more high pace, then I would have just burnt out really quickly. But it was hard. I had a knee surgery. I had an ACL reconstruction.
Wow.
Both my elbows don't straighten any more than what they are right now. If you can see this, they're not that much, and they don't bend any more than what they are.
I got to give you that club bell.
Yeah, I do. Really, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that because, I think that'll help a lot.
Yeah, create the space and get you back the mobility.
Get my arms back, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a common thing with jiu-jitsu people like that have been athletes that have been, been at it for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wish I could have told myself when I first started just to tap a lot more, more regularly. It's hard, dude. You get in those positions and your mind's like, don't tap. Someone's looking at you. They're going to think. And I think one thing that really hurts a lot of competitors, and this is very much me, is I feel like people value me for how I'm rolling at that time. It doesn't matter what I've won. If I lose this roll or if I get tapped now, people see that and they tell people, they talk. And look at that. Half of that is true. They do, and as like people look at you rolling and you might be like playing around with something and going light and you get stuck in a position, someone taps you and then like the other goes, oh, did you see that? Yeah. Little Johnny tapped him, If
you don't train, if you don't compete, right? You won't get tapped. You won't lose.
Yeah. So I wish I just was a little bit more conscious. The
people's opinions that matter, right, are the people that are in the arena. Then they'll never really.
Yeah, they know.
They know.
Yeah, the ones that know. It's the other ones that talk a lot that don't know. And I hear this a lot. I remember I had a friend, Kevin Mack. He's a good guy. He's a comedian. I was doing a skit with him, and I trained with him like a couple of weeks before that, and he was introducing me to these girls, and he's like, oh, Kit's a black belt, If me and him trained, I would probably only tap him once. And I was like, Kevin did train like maybe 2 months or something. I was like, hold on a second, Kevin, what? You'll tap me once if we try? I said, listen, bro, you're not going to get anywhere near me at your level right now. But it was more fun. I said it comedically, but like, because people just don't realize. Because when I trained with him, I was rolling really light and I was letting him do things, and I did let him submit me, But people don't realize that there's levels, and it's very hard to tell what level someone's rolling at.
He trained for 2 months and he was saying that. He has no idea.
So it's not his fault, He's just going off what he perceives. But perception is one of the worst indicators of the truth, as we know. I think they've done a lot of tests to prove that.
How did you get into the entertainment industry? Acting and, like you entertain us all, in the jiu-jitsu community. And I appreciate that. That's what we're talking now. Cause you make me laugh on a consistent basis. It's like, did I just read that right?
That's good. That's nice. I think, my family was very comedy inclined. We have something we call taking the piss out of someone,
taking the piss out of somebody.
Where basically we're just going to try and embarrass you. And,
nice.
My family did this on a consistent basis. Like I remember when I was 21 and I was going bald, and that was really hard because, when you're young and you have hair, you get attached to that image, and I'm losing my hair. And I'm like, I'm 21 years old and I look like I'm 47 years old right now. I would arrive to like a family function. I would see my older cousins there and they were a lot funnier, better looking than me. And I'd be like, oh no. And they would be like, oh, and they'd yell it real loud. Hey Kit, what's going on? Thinners? And like call me like Bruce Willis or something like that and just embarrass me. So one, I realized very quickly I need to get tough skin. Two, I realized I need to be quicker witted because I need to it's a little battle here. It's like a linguistic battle of like, let's see who can embarrass each other. So my family was very much like that, which made me, gravitate towards comedy. The other thing was I was a very late developer in school. So I was a lot smaller than the kids in my class, and I was in no way, shape or form going to be an enforcer when it come to any kind of physical activities. So I had to make people laugh so they wouldn't beat me up. And there was many situations where I just know I had to be very quick-witted because this kid's putting me in a headlock right now and I don't know where he's going to go with this. He might want to pop my head off. He might want to give me a noogie. But if I can verbally manipulate him in a way that allows him to maybe look at me as something funny and, non-threatening, then he might let me go, and it happened a lot. So I had to use my mouth to save me. That sounds really bad. That's not like people do in Hollywood to make it, but I had to be quick-witted.
You have some friends of yours that are going to make nice videos out of that.
Yeah, I know. It's the way.
Clip.
Anytime I say so many stupid things, especially I Twitch stream as well, so I play gaming on Twitch and people can join me. And there's so often I say things on there that I'm just like, oh, I know straight away. And as soon as they hear it, they're like clipping it, which is fun. It makes it fun. I enjoy it. But so my parents, my mum and her family, they're Italian immigrants. When they arrived here years ago, and she had 10 siblings, they had a video camera and they started filming like sketch comedy because they were bored. They were living on a farm. There was like 50 people in that town. they started filming like little skits where they were like news anchors and they were like interviewing someone that saw UFOs. And I thought it was hilarious back in the day. And I think it was quite funny still, probably if I watched it. But because they did that, there was me and I got two brothers, younger brothers, and we got a video camera when we were growing up. And I remember we just wanted to shoot funny comedy. We wanted to copy them. So we started doing the same sort of thing. We were filming little like news anchor episodes, and we loved wrestling and we loved martial arts. So we were doing like Bruce Lee stuff, WWE stuff. We made a ring in the backyard. So we're always recording. And then my smallest, the littlest brother, Scott, he got into a film school probably just before I started getting into martial arts. So he was studying for a long time. So I was doing the martial arts. He was doing the film school. And he's done really well for himself. He just directed his first feature film starring Megan Fox.
Wow.
So it's like a huge movie that'll come out.
What's the name of the movie?
It's called Till Death.
Till Death.
Yeah.
Cool.
So she wakes up handcuffed to her husband that's dead she's handcuffed to her boyfriend, I think, that's dead. And then she's got these men coming after her, and it's like, that's all I can say right now, but it's like, it's a cool thriller, action thriller. So he was doing that, and before he got that big, we were doing a lot of sketch comedy. So we started doing comedy, and I just try to. I think that I enjoy making people laugh, and I like lighting people's days if I can. So I was definitely inclined to whatever I'm doing. I'm always trying to find a funny way to spin it. So it worked well with martial arts, and I feel like because a lot of martial artists are probably a little bit more stiff. I was probably one of the first people to do that, but Craig Jones does it now, and he's hilarious, and there's a lot of other really funny guys. So I think that's kind of how I got into film, and then I was very lucky in getting a few acting roles. Like I was a lead in Iron Sky, which is great, and a few more movies that come out this year I'm in. So it's been good, but that's a 10-year journey that I'm just starting.
10-year journey. Huh?
Yeah, I think that's realistically I think in 7 years, people will start seeing me on a lot more bigger movies, and we'll be able to do that. But it just takes us time, and I need to develop what we call the chops as an actor. Right now I feel like I'm a blue belt actor, but you want to be a black belt. So I just got to keep working at it. And I think that'll eventually do well, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You love it. You've been doing it since you were a kid, right?
There's nothing I enjoy more than like being able to play a character on film. It really is. Like it just literally like when I was playing like what we'd call like army when we were kids, pretending we had fake guns and stuff shooting people. It's literally the exact same thing, but on a bigger scale, and you get paid a lot of money to do it, which is even better. Yeah.
What's your ideal character or movie type of movie?
Man, that's really hard. I mean, I feel like comedy is easier for me to do, but ideally I would really like to play three-dimensional characters. Characters that suffered with a lot of grief and a lot of things, just things that are different to my life. I've had a reasonably good life. So for me to do that is much more challenging and really step inside of, to give an example, let's say I play a father that just lost his family or something, would be really, really challenging, and would really give me the opportunity to sort of live in someone else's shoes and feel what that's like, and that would be really fun to play. Action's very easy, I feel like, that's action fighting and stuff, but I would like to play more three-dimensional characters. And I think the thing that I really enjoy about acting is I enjoy psychology. I enjoy anthropology. I like to study human movement, human thoughts, all that kind of stuff. And when you think about acting, that's really what you're doing. It's the same as martial arts. You're just learning why we do what we do, and why certain things shape you. And the more I learn about acting, the more I understand about real life, of why people do little things they do. Why, when people in a rush, they do little things like just, it could be as subtle as like grabbing keys out of something in their pocket, or when you sit down with somebody and they put their phone on the table versus their phone in their pocket. If I put my phone in my pocket and I'm talking to you, yeah, it feels like, okay, he's here to talk, but if I'm talking to you and I put my phone here, then I feel like you get the subconscious feeling of he's not all here because he's still like occupied with his phone.
Step away from his phone.
Although I did put my phone on here just because I am getting picked up after this, so I need to just to make sure if she doesn't need the address. But little things like that, which I feel help in real life. And there's things that you do subconsciously and you don't understand, but when you're consciously aware of it, then you can better shape, the message that you're sending, which is kind of what I would talk about in martial arts as well. Knowing that everything you do conveys a message. And you want to be very specific on the message that you are conveying, because if you're telling everyone exactly what you're thinking, it's like trying to play poker with a mirror on your chest. They could see your cards, you're never going to win. But, if you can get better at reading them, then it's like them playing with a mirror on their chest. You can see exactly what they're doing. So I feel like it helps with everything.
That's a great way to put it, and just you have to get it. It helps you grow, right, as a person.
Yeah. You understand things. You learn about yourself. There's things that, you do subconsciously or consciously that for other reasons when you grow up and you can figure these things out, and then you have a better chance of changing, which is what we should all strive for, is to change for the better. But if you're not even aware of these little things, then it's very hard to change them.
When did you know like you're gonna do this jiu-jitsu thing? You're gonna commit?
I met a guy when I was dating a girl. She was a nightmare. She was a stripper. She was like, and she had a lot of really powerful friends. And she introduced me to a businessman she knew, multimillionaire, owns multiple companies. I didn't have a job at the time, so he gave me a job with him, and he had a group within the job called the Hunters of Excellence group. It was something he was playing with. He was really into Anthony Robbins. He was into laws of attraction and all that kind of stuff, affirmations and stuff. So I sat in his class and I really enjoyed it. And after maybe 14 weeks, I got to a point where the class had given me the confidence to understand that I could do or have whatever I really want if I'm willing to put the work in. To, of course, some extent. I'm not going to be some NBA basketballer at 5'9" or anything like that. But I knew that there's a lot of things I could have if I really want. And I now believe in myself enough to be able to take the steps to achieve these things. And I thought, well, what do I really enjoy doing? And there was a few things, and one of them was martial arts. So I was like, okay, my goal now is to become one of the best. So you did
this course?
Yeah.
A course, okay.
Yeah. So it was a course over 14 weeks, I think it was. And it's kind of funny because he put me in this course, and the course eventually was the reason why I quit the job, because I'm like, well, I deserve something better than this. I want to go out and get something of my own. I'm still friends with him to this day, and he still does courses. He's great. Danny Voyer, his name is. But I decided, well, I'm going to put the effort into jiu-jitsu. Okay, my goal was to get a black belt in 3 years. That was my first goal. I didn't get that. I got it in 4, but it was still very quick, and with no prior graphic experience. Well,
that's a long time, man.
Yeah. So that was my first goal. And then what I had behind that was I was going to go into MMA. But by the time I got really good at jiu-jitsu, I kind of got a little bit bored of competing. And that's where I probably was looking more at going into acting and stuff like that. So I had the goal of going to MMA, and then I thought, well, most guys, not all, but a lot of guys go from jiu-jitsu to MMA to acting afterwards. So I was like, well, how about I just cut out the MMA, because I don't want to take too much, brain damage. And I have a head that's big. It's probably going to get punched a lot. So I'm like, and I'm short for what I would fight in. So I was like, well, I want to kind of limit that. So maybe I'll just skip the MMA part and go into to acting. And then I snapped my ACL in 2014, which kind of forced me off of the mat for 2.5 years. And I was in a weird position because when I did snap my ACL, I had already quit jiu-jitsu. I was a black belt by then. I fought in London. I fought with Victor Severio in a submission-only competition. There was no submission, so it was a draw. And that was the last competition I did for a while. And I came back, and my brother was coaching Australian rules football. And I came on as assistant coach and started playing. And I was using things that I'd learnt through coaching and training in jiu-jitsu in the football. The team was at the bottom of the ladder the year before, and it was full of a lot of young kids. We got to the top of the ladder that year because we changed a lot of things. There was a lot of things I learned while studying coaching and studying psychology and how people react to certain coaching that we applied with the team, which worked really well. So the team started going really good. But in round 5, within 4 or 5 seconds left in the game, I went to pivot I had the football. I went to pivot just lightly, and my knee just completely gave way, and I snapped my ACL. I tore my MCL, my LCL, my PCL, and I split my meniscus. So I needed surgery. I didn't have any money. I was getting paid to play football at the time, but I didn't have any money from anything else. So I had private healthcare. I had public healthcare
in Australia.
In Australia, but there was a waiting list for that, and it ended up taking 2 years before I would have even been able to get the surgery done. In between that time, I ended up, because I remember being at the doctor's. The doctor said to me, he's like, "Kid, have you been walking?" And I'm like, "I've been running around." And he goes, "Your knee is like messed up." He's like, "You shouldn't even be walking right now. Like, we need to get surgery." And I'm like, God damn it. So I remember leaving, and I was waiting for my mum to pick me up, and I'm just sitting there with my head in between my legs, and I'm like, okay, the football and the martial arts is over for the moment. Just let it go, which was really hard because especially with the football, I was really enjoying the football. And I was like, just let it go. Okay, what can I do now? What can I do that I'd enjoy, that I was getting the same out of that? And I was like, okay, acting. I've always wanted to do acting, but I've never really applied myself. So I was like, hey, that's what I'm going to do. I spoke to my little brother. He had a friend who was an actor and had an agent. He asked the friend to ask the agent if he wanted anyone else to represent. I got a meeting with that agent. We got along really well, and he took me on. I ended up getting I was very lucky. I got a small role in Jack Irish, which is a series starring Guy Pearce, and then after that, I got approached.
That was in Australia?
That was in Australia. Cool. And then after that, I got approached by a director, Timo, who was directing a movie called Iron Sky, The Coming Race. And he'd already shot a movie in, I think, 2007 called Iron Sky, which did really well in Europe. And he sent me a message on Facebook. It's so weird because
Where's Iron Sky? Is that on Netflix? Or?
It's on Netflix now.
Cool.
In America. Yeah. Iron Sky, The Coming Race. And he sent me a message, and he's like, "Hey, Kit, are you an actor as well as a director?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just an actor. I did at the time on Facebook, you could just put actor/director." And he's like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "Well, I'm shooting a movie at the moment, or I'm shooting a movie soon called Iron Sky, The Coming Race. And we're shooting in Europe, and you look exactly the way I picture one of the leads. Would you be willing to do an audition?" And I'm just thinking to myself, like, who is this dude? Is he like a student or something like that? And I looked up his name on IMDb, and I'm like, oh my God, he's a real director. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, yeah, of course I'll do an audition. So he sent me a scene. I did an audition. They really liked it. Nice. And they sent me another audition. Then they really liked that one. And then I had a meeting with them over like Zoom or Skype or something. Nice. And him and the producers. And then he had to just convince the producers because I was very fresh to acting, but they took a chance with me. And then I went over there and I did that movie. I had to do an American accent as well, which was really hard for me. So I did that.
Let me hear the accent.
Okay, I'm going to have to get into it a little bit. Sometimes takes me a little bit of time, but
wow.
But I went and did the movie, and I'm doing an American accent as an Australian, and I've never done that before. So
I was like, "Whoa, who's this guy?"
I'm a little stiff, but after a while, it took me like 2 months to get going on that. But yeah, I did that movie, and that was great. I got paid, I think, $53,000 to do that, which was awesome. And then I used that to get my knee fixed, and not just to get my knee fixed, but because I had to pay for it myself, but also just to be able to survive while I was getting my knee fixed. So I did that, which was great. And then I realized, well, the acting is going to take a while, so I need to really utilize my jiu-jitsu financially to be able to sustain, until the acting's ready. And that's where I brought out the jiu-jitsu programs, and they absolutely smashed it. We sold, I think, over 20,000 copies of that product. So that was what was being able to keep me afloat for the last, 6-7 years, maybe now.
6-7 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, you had the line like, yeah, stop drilling. You don't need to drill.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to me. But
I said a lot of people with that.
Well, it catches your attention. You're like, well, what is he talking about?
It's a very strong phrase. And it's very easy to, and I rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way.
Right.
And definitely confused a lot of people. And it is a confusing topic because it is something that you need to really sit down and think about to really understand what I'm saying. And basically what I'm trying to explain to people is that the body learns a certain way. And depending on the way you decide to structure your training will dictate how you learn certain things. And a lot of people have adopted the industrial age model of learning, which is I tell you exactly what to do, you repeat it, and then you're correct. And as a martial artist yourself, you know that there is no correct technique, really. There are things that will work, and it's the same thing that will not work in a different circumstance. Like we can show our best technique, but that best technique can be countered. The important thing on whether that technique works is the timing. And the timing is just understanding whether this is the right thing to do. For example, if I want to do something to you and you think I'm doing A when I'm really doing B, then the timing's great. It works. So the technique works, but the timing is a really important thing. So what I try to get people to understand is that the technique isn't the dictator of whether it works. The most important thing is the timing. And when you go into timing, then you start realizing that there's a lot more things that come to play. So there's one thing we know with the human body is the reason we learn is a survival mechanism. Okay, everything we do as a human biologically is to survive and procreate. Yeah. So if we think of learning, well, learning's our tool to survive. If some big bald dude comes and hits you with a club, back in the day, then, well, you're going to learn really quickly when a big bald dude comes with a club, not to even hear him, you know what I mean? If you eat a certain berry and you realize your body reacts to certain things. So when you know that that's the reason why you learn, then there's a couple of really interesting things that happen. For starters, you don't really learn or remember things when you're not emotionally engaged in things. And what I mean by that, the reason why is your brain doesn't really know what's important to learn. Your body doesn't know what's really important to learn. What dictates is your amygdala, and what it does is it decides by how emotionally aroused you are, whether this is something or a situation that you need to learn from. So if you're practicing a technique with no kind of emotional context and you're just practicing and drilling it, your body's just going to forget it. And they found they tested this with a lot of different things. They would learn things for a day or two, and within 3 weeks that the memory retention on that was terrible. They would lose 80% of what they did. But when you're emotionally engaged, you remember a lot more. It's can you remember 9/11? And most people can remember where you were in 9/11, right, where you watched that, because you're emotionally engaged. Something serious has happened and you're just what's going on? When you could probably remember the last 3 times you were submitted in jiu-jitsu, especially as you get better and better and it happens less and less. You remember these things. You remember the last time you're taken down. You remember the last time you sweat because emotionally it affected you. So knowing, and they call it the emotional arousal theory of memory, knowing that, then you got to think, okay, well, I'm going to remember.
Stuff, man. Appreciate this. Yeah.
Thank you. No.
Go ahead.
So I know that when I'm structure training, I need to make sure that my students are emotionally engaged. And it's very hard to do that when it comes to just practicing a technique. A really good way to do that is with positional sparring with some kind of high consequences. So when I was doing football, this is something I did with football because my brother was trying to get their skills higher, okay? So what he did is when they were doing drills, he would say, if someone drops the football, because they kick it to someone as they drop it, everyone gets 10 push-ups. So what happened is people didn't want to drop the ball because they didn't want to miss a target because they didn't want to be the reason why everyone does push-ups. So they started slowing things down, okay, which didn't really work well because then they go into a game where they've got high level stress and they can't deal with that because they've been slowing things down during training. I said, change that, Adam. Let's make it, if they drop a ball while they're not going 100%, then everyone gets punished. So then what happens is people are more motivated about doing it because everyone's trying it 100% now. So when they catch the ball, when they kick the ball, they feel really good about themselves because they're going so high. So everyone was stepping it up and they're going so hard during training, and the motivation and the atmosphere was so much more positive because they're like, yeah, go for it. Instead of don't do this, don't do that. It was motivated by positivity. And then when it came to training and the game, they were so good because they had trained under high stress environments and felt very comfortable in that. So when it comes to competition, They were ready for that rather than the other way. So taking that into jiu-jitsu, you benefit very little from sitting there doing anything that's unemotionally engaged. When you do positional sparring, and I say to you, and I'm like, don't lose this takedown. Don't do it. Don't get swept. And the class is watching you. Suddenly you've got pressure, you got stress, you got emotion, you got anxiety, nerves, but your brain is remembering everything. Your body is remembering everything. So everything you learnt in that, your body's absorbing because it feels like
it's important. Yeah.
Yes, it needs to learn this. So all of my training was like this because I never turned up for the technique portion of training. That wasn't because I didn't think it worked. That was because I was bored of it and I felt like I really wanted to take ownership of my jiu-jitsu. The things that I liked in jiu-jitsu were figuring out the problems. I love like problem solving. So if I'm in a problem and I have a problem, I want to figure out a solution myself. When the coaches would tell me what to do, I appreciated it, but I didn't really want it. I was kind of in my head, I'm just like, I kind of like, the thing I enjoy is actually figuring these out myself. And I think a lot of men can definitely relate to that. We want to figure things out ourselves. And it's like why women come and tell us their problems and we're trying to figure them out. They don't want a solution.
Look at the instructions, how to build that thing or any map.
No, just tell me.
We good.
And we mess it all up, But we learn from that, we like trial and error. And so when you do jiu-jitsu like that, you are absorbing so much more information than what if you weren't. So if you look at Vilfredo Prato's rule, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions, and this is universal, you can start looking at jiu-jitsu differently. And I started looking and think, okay, everyone is, doing drilling and doing rolling, but what is the most important part of it? Is it the rolling or is it the drilling? And it's very confusing. And the reason why it's confusing is because when you drill a technique over and over again, you can see that you're actually getting better at that technique. And then you go and roll and you start hitting that technique more because you are consciously you're observant of that technique and you're trying to make that happen. It's like when you decide you want to get a red car and then suddenly you see red cars on the freeway all the time. But before then you never saw that. So it's a little bit of neurolinguistic programming where you're training your brain to do something. The problem in that is you become more forceful and less organic. It's like if you want to learn how to pick up women and you're learning pickup lines, you're going to have a big problem because one, you've got pickup lines and you start doing it, but it's going to seem unorganic because you're always using a technique rather than just understanding conceptually what do women like. What can I do? Women don't like you bragging about yourself. So, okay, well, let's not talk about myself. Women like you being mysterious. Okay, so if they ask me questions, I'm going to lead them in a certain way that gives them a little bit of information. Like, oh, you do jiu-jitsu? Yeah, I do jiu-jitsu. You do like dancing. That dancing's sick. And just steer them away from anything. So by the end of the date, they have no idea about me still. Most guys will sit there and tell them everything about themselves and they're trying to brag about everything. The girl leaves the date, knows everything about you, doesn't need to see you again. There's no mystery there. It's like, and you are very obvious by bragging about yourself that you were very interested in them. So they lose that attraction to you. And like this, so conceptual learning, I feel like is by far more beneficial and more organic. So I started trying to figure out, and this was early as a blue belt. I'm like, okay, well, I feel like the rolling is far more important. And to test this out, I can give you an example of myself. I'm nothing special. Okay. I'm just an ordinary human. I learnt through just rolling and doing positional sparring. I went from white to black in 4 years, faster than anyone else to have no prior grappling experience while living in Australia, which had very little grappling, grapplers at the time. I never drilled. Then you have other guys like Atos and stuff that were drilled to win. They were very heavy drilled. So they drilled, but they still had professional guys that were the best in the world as well. So it's very hard from an outside perspective when you hear someone say you have to drill to win. That's the way to learn. It's like, well, but you're not taking into a few different things into account. Those guys that were drilling were also rolling and sparring a lot with the best guys in the world. So if I removed their drilling, would they still be the best in the world? In my opinion, yes, they would, because that's where they're learning a lot. But it's very hard to tell people that because it seems like, no, it's not true because I'm learning these techniques and I'm applying them. but they don't give credit to the human brain and its ability to problem solve through that. You know, every technique there is, you don't need to learn it because you can discover it. They were already discovered. Sure that you can get, like, people can show you more techniques and, you know, that you probably wouldn't figure out yourself, but you don't even need half of those. Like, what you need to do is find simple solutions to the problem at hand. And I feel like that when you go the technique route of it, it overcomplicates things and it makes things seem more cluttered and more complex. If I told someone, for example, let's say you're working on sweeps, and I can say, okay, my new student, Frederick, you're working on sweeps. There's 700 different sweeps, and we're going to get you to practice them all, and you're going to master them. So it's going to take 10,000 reps of every single sweep to master it. So we got 700 years of training, you know what I mean? To master everything, you know. Right. If you go that route, then you're going to learn 1 or 2 sweeps and get very, you know, forceful at those sweeps and get very proficient at those sweeps. Or I can tell you the other thing. I can say, if you want to sweep anyone anywhere, you have to do 2 things. You have to remove someone's ability to post in a certain direction, and you have to generate enough leverage to move them in that direction. If you do that correctly, you will sweep anyone. You will take down anyone, and you will turn over anyone. That's like the biggest fundamental concept for sweeping. Of course, it's going to get more complex, and we can make it more complex when we go to different positions and how to do it from different positions. But just that one concept alone can help you, like, give you some kind of direction to sweeping anyone in positions that you don't already have techniques. Because I can be in a weird position and go, well, okay, I hold his arm here. Now he can't post in this direction. Now I just need to be creative enough to allow him, you know, to push him in this direction, and then I sweep him. So I started doing that a lot, and I started being very creative with my sweeps. And the more you do that, especially because you're doing it live, you get excited by the chance of actually achieving it, or frustrated by not achieving it. Your brain's storing all of this information, and it's like every single session, you're just your information declarative memory is growing and growing and growing, and your experience and skill set is growing. So it's easier to figure out new ways, and it's quicker to figure out new ways. So what I essentially became was a very fast problem solver. And I know that when I get into new areas, I'm going to come up with a solution faster than them, especially if they've got like a high drilling based background. Another thing that really that'll help you understand why this works so well is there's 2 memory, let's simplify it, there's 2 memory sections. There's the declarative section, and there is the procedural section. Procedural is muscle memory, okay? That's like when you're walking and you're doing talking, it's all muscle memory, okay? Declarative is information that you can declare. To give an example of the difference, right? If I told you...
Conscious and subconscious.
Yes. So if I told you to... Let's say if I asked for your password on your phone, and you could say it's 4738. That's declarative. If you said, hold on, let me grab my phone, and you have to do it with your muscles, and then suddenly you can do it, that's procedural. So procedural memory is, as I said, it's just muscle memory. That's when you get like those repetitions, and you get it through rolling. You don't have to do high repetition to get it. You can just roll and you'll get it. You know, we learn to walk by just trying to walk. Okay, we learned to run by trying to run. We didn't stand there, you know, moving our arms and legs like this. We had our parents grab us and move us, and we'd fall over. And then you would start getting the feeling for it. So even when you're rolling, you do develop muscle memory. But the most important thing is it's very accurate muscle memory, because the situation is very accurate. When you pre-shape something, and you pre-shape a technique and a reaction, it's not organic. It's not really true. It's a recreation of what you want to create. But it doesn't always happen like that, and often happens a little bit differently. It might be very similar, but it's very differently. You know, if I shoot on the single leg, they sprawl, I go to the back. It's like, yeah, essentially that can happen, but it's always going to be a little bit different when it's real. When it's real, people will see certain things. They react a little bit different. So the muscle memory you get when you're rolling is true muscle memory. When you're drilling something, it's false. It may be very similar. Like it could be we could have this conversation, then we could try and repeat the same conversation. It would be very different. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be as organic.
Right.
The other thing is the declarative memory works like a scaffolding system. Now, the less you have of memory and the less scaffolding you have, the harder it is to learn things. Okay. Well, the number one dictator of whether we learn is not whether it's visual, kinesthetic, or audio. It's how we associate with the information. If we have no association with the information, then it'll go through one ear and out the other. Have you ever heard someone talk about, for example, surfing, and you've never surfed, and they use terminology that you wouldn't know?
Right.
could say something about the swell, and you'd just be like, I fucking have no idea what is. You lost me at swell. I don't even know what it is. It'll go through one ear and out the other. Okay, but if you've surfed for a bit and you've felt that and you get that, then that information's more likely to stick. When you first start jiu-jitsu, and you've never done jiu-jitsu or not, and someone starts talking about berimbolos and doing this and that, you're just going to be sitting there like, what are you talking about? You have no idea. But the more you learn from trial and error, the more that information starts growing. And the bigger that scaffolding is, the easier it is to learn new information. So what I do is when I get new students is I don't teach them anything. I tell them what the goal of jiu-jitsu is. I tell them the function of some of the positions like guard and passing and takedowns.
What do you say? What's the goal for jiu-jitsu?
I tell them the goal is to force your opponent into a position or trap them into a position where they have to quit by either tapping out, by physical manipulation, or by chokes. And I don't even have to focus so much on that. It's just more of a goal. Like that's the goal of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And then I will talk about the positions. So this is guard, this is passing. The reason why we play guard is, we want to do these things from here. And I give them an objective from there. The first session, I don't teach them nothing. I say, okay, you're going to try and pass my guard. My guard is my legs. You want to get into this position, mount, side control, or take my back. That's your goal. I know you don't know how to do it. I don't care. I just want you to try, okay? And most likely you're going to fail, but I want you just to keep trying. And at first they're tentative. Okay, he hasn't taught me anything. They start playing around and they're trying to do it. And you just see them thinking like his legs are in the way. They're like frustrated. But then suddenly they get like close to a pass or something. You see their eyes light up and they're like, oh, I threw the legs out of the way. And they start recognizing like these things that are starting to work for them. They start trying more and more. They get excited. They have fun. They get a sweat. And they feel like they're learning so much more because they're figuring things out. And then I'll turn it around. I say, now I'm going to try and pass your guard. Okay. And we do it again. And that'll literally be the end of the session. And I'll ask them any questions they have, and I'll give them little tips. I'd say, listen, you work on your posture when you're passing because your head's really far down, your legs are really straight. I want you to bend those legs a little bit more, and I want you to straighten your spine. This will give you better mobility. Also be on your toes a little bit more and move a little smoother. Use your arms more. It'll be little tips that I'm giving them, okay? But I'm not telling them how to do any techniques. And then the next session they come, and you should see the difference in them. Like, they're so much better. Like they've learned so much more. And I just keep growing that declarative memory to a point where then I can start adding more technical things. But if I try to teach them about an underhook first session and all this kind of stuff, they're not even going to know why am I doing an underhook? What is this crap? What am I doing? Doing a knee cut the first session or an arm bar? I don't even know how to mount somebody properly, let alone arm bar them. So I try and get them to a point where whatever information I get them to, the moment I tell them, it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really high level. It's good.
Yeah,
for that neuroplasticity, for it to make that change,
yes,
they've got to be excited.
Yeah.
And the best way to get them excited is by them training in real time.
Getting in there. And I've had people that, let's say, have trained for 6 months with someone else, and they do one session with me, and they say, kid, I've learned more in this one session than I have in the last 6 months. But it's not from me. They don't learn anything from me. They learned it through discovery themselves. I just created an environment that allows them to get the best out of themselves. It's like a gym. If you've got a gym where you've got only 20-pound dumbbells, well, you're probably not going to create a world champion. But I mean, you're going to, depending on the student, certain students will make the best of that and still do really well. But if you could get the best gym in the world with ice baths, with saunas, with the higher weights, with good massages, then depending on the student, because it's up to the student entirely themselves, depending on that student will dictate, how good they can go, but they can go a lot higher. So I try and create as best an environment as I can for the students to figure out as much as they can. And I've got a girl that works with me right now. Her name's Kayla. Huge following on social media. She's got like 1.1 million followers.
Wow.
Beautiful girl. She has done 7 sessions with me now, and she is phenomenally good, like really good. And I don't mention not black belt good, you know what I mean? But like 6 sessions, she seems amazing. Like she's moving to someone that's been doing it for a whole year. And she's only done 6 sessions. And I post a lot of the videos of it. She's doing things that like I've never even taught her. She put me in an arm bar the other day and then did a stiff arm lock on me. And I actually hurt my arm because I didn't expect it because I'm like, she shouldn't know how to do this. And she just did it. She does like, the things that I'm teaching her or showing her are only the things that I feel like are at her level of skill. And the way I can tell this, if I teach someone something and they have to practice it, then they're not ready for it. if I teach them something and they go, oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah. Okay, cool. And they do it while live rolling, then they were ready for it. And that's the difference between whether someone's ready to learn what you're teaching and whether they're not. If you have to get your students to drill something, like because they just don't understand it, then they're probably not ready for that. But when they are ready, and I've had the same thing, I had this discussion with Galval where he showed me a technique and he's like, keep practicing. I'm like, no, I need to. He's not practice. I said, literally, I saw it. I can do it right now. And I try to do it in competition. Like it made sense in my brain. The declarative memory just got it and it makes sense. And I can see why they're doing it and what they're doing it. I can do it now. You know what I mean? But it's only because my declarative memory is good enough to do that. But if you start people doing too much technical training before they have any experience, then they're going to go down a path where they continuously have to be told what to do because they never figured out how to learn it themselves. I get it. It gets harder as you have a bigger class and stuff like that. It gets harder to micromanage
because everybody has different nervous systems, right?
Yeah,
different brains, how they think, how they learn.
Yeah, and you need to the way they learn is very similar, but they're going to have very different. Solutions to the problems based on the way they were brought up and the body size. So it's very hard to tailor them, but you can micromanage that as well as you can, especially when you know them as much as you do. But the really important thing is to try and get them to an experience level that when you teach them something, it just sticks to their head. And when someone says something, it's a light bulb moment, then you know that you're on the right path. But it is a harder path because it requires the students to figure things out themselves. And some students are going to come to class and they are going to be brainwashed by the industrial age model and they're going to be like, no, just tell me what to do. And you can just tell them what to do. They're never going to be very good. They're going to rely on you all the time. But there's other kids that come in there and you can see they're figuring things out straight away. And you can tell them they're just a little different. They're working things out. So you can give them little tips and little things and they just pick it up and they just do really well with that. And I think that's the most important thing, as a coach, is to take it away from an industrial age model into an agricultural model where you act more like a farmer that waters the students, gives them, enough sunlight and water, but allows them to grow in their own sort of way. And I feel like you've done that here. I train with your guys and your guys are really good. And it's, and not just really good in the fact that they feel like they're copying you, really good and feel like they're going their own path. And everyone I roll with was very different. Like I feel like they've come up with their own solutions, which is a credit to your coaching. And it was a lot of fun too for me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I try to keep an open mind, right? And that's where the magic happens, right? But it's interesting because, Barambola, but everybody's different, so it is challenging. But I definitely try to keep my open mind to have people be their best, right?
Yeah, I mean that's all you can do. You just the problem with the technical aspect is Barambolas, for example, they do work.
Yeah.
But very few people can do it. I can't even do them anymore. I compress my disc if I try and do it. You get a big fat dude trying to do that, good luck. But that big fat dude will do stuff that the Barambolo kids can't do.
Yeah.
You just got to, give them time to sort of figure out that path and really have, and this is where a lot of, hopefully if any coaches are listening, understand this, that your student is very much capable of learning this stuff. If they are alive right now, then they have the genetic that allows them to learn. Okay. Don't
to our last breath, right?
Yeah.
We can learn.
Because otherwise, if you couldn't learn, you wouldn't survive. You would have stopped breathing, you would have stopped eating and not learned anything, But if they're alive right now and they are a functioning part of society, there's a good chance that they can figure this stuff out because it's not that difficult. A lot of solutions in jiu-jitsu are very simple. It's just body mechanics. It's not astrophysics, It's not like we're trying to find a cure for something. We're literally just trying to find multiple ways to do certain things. And although we know it is complex, in how high you can go with that, but really the functionality of it's very simple. It's just body mechanics.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Appreciate high level.
Thank you, man.
Stuff behind all the stuff you're talking about.
There's
you just hear the headline
studying.
and it's like you talk about the science and the things behind it.
And there's a lot that I've forgotten too. There's heaps that I wouldn't even be able to have time to mention today. But there is a lot, and it was something that I accidentally stumbled upon. That later that I realized, well, okay, why did I get so good in such little time, not doing what was, what I would have considered the most important part of training. And then when I looked at the case studies of all this kind of stuff, I started realizing, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. But it is very counterintuitive to what we would normally think. And of course, because of the industrial age model, which was designed in the 60s to create factory workers, it's kind of confusing.
Before that, right? The 1900s probably, to get people to, once they start college and all that,
Dude, yeah, it's nuts. There's a lot of things that like would have definitely steered us in the wrong direction if we didn't have so many amazing people doing case studies on this kind of stuff and figuring things out, which is great.
Any goals that you have in your horizon?
I'm going to get back into competing a little bit. So I don't have the eye of the tiger to be like the best in the world, but if it does come back, then that will be the goal. But right now, it's like I want to have fun with competing. I want to continue to coach people, and especially with the online products and stuff like that, to continue to push that and help people with that. The acting side of things, I want to really make it with the acting, but it's a long-term goal. And just to live my life in a way that I really enjoy, and to affect people in a positive manner as much as I can. That's kind of the goals right now.
Awesome. Well,
and to find 1 million really hot women, have a lot of sex and stuff like that too as well.
That's it.
It's so fun.
Thank you, man. Thank you for today. Thank you for making us all laugh in the jiu-jitsu community.
Thank you, man.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.